YouTubers and NFL fans everywhere. This is Matt, the NFL Fanatic, giving you my Week 8 2024 NFL predictions. Well, for the Fanatic, last week, after I had my best week overall, again, having my perfect week of going 14-0, unfortunately for me, and I actually should have mentioned, it was going to be 17-0. The streak stopped at 17-0 with the Seahawks-Falcons game, which ended when Kirk Cousins had the fumble in a 10-point game that made it a 17-point game, and ended up losing the game by 20 points. So the undefeated streak, unfortunately, has ended. It was a great 17-game run while it lasted. I don't know if I'll ever have another 17-game streak like that ever again. But overall, though, for the week so far, it's another positive week for the Fanatics. So I will gladly take that. When you look at my record so far this week with my spread and straight-up picks against the spread, I went 7-6 so far, which equals 53.8%. And straight-up right now, I am 9-4 straight-up. That equals 69.2%. So now overall for the year so far, I am now 50 and 52-3 against the spread. And now straight up, I am 68 and 37. That equals 49.1% against the spread. And straight up now, I am 64.8%. So in about 8 weeks after the great week the last 2 weeks I've had, I'm basically right at about my average every year. And with 10 weeks to go, I'm very thrilled that I think I can maybe have a new personal best with my straight up percentage, and maybe for the first time in a while, I actually probably could get my against the spread percentage above 500, which is always my goal. But definitely, it was a week of picks that, with my straight up picks, the only two bad ones that I got was definitely Seattle-Atlanta. But like I said, that was a 10-point game going into the fourth quarter. Geno Smith and that offense actually played very well, which I was a little surprised by. Actually, wait. No, I wasn't surprised by Geno Smith. I'll put it that way. I wasn't surprised by Geno. I was more surprised by the Seattle defense. They had started out 3-0 and gave about 14.5 points a game. The last 3 games, which they had lost, they had given about 37 points a game. To play the Atlanta Falcons, who had been basically one of the more consistent and red-hot offenses in the NFL for the last month, to hold them to 14 and to have Kirk Cousins have to have 3 turnovers, that was massive. I think they said Seattle going into that game had only caused 3 turnovers the entire year. To get 3 turnovers in one game, that's pretty impressive. Also, little fun fact for Seattle fans, Byron Young apparently was one of their draft picks. Apparently, he had missed the last 3 games. The other 4 games that he was active, they've won every single one of them. So, fun little fact there for Seattle fans that will understand it. I keep attention to those little things. But that was one of my losses. And then, of course, last night, Steelers-Jets, I was stunned by the least of how well the Pittsburgh offense looked against the Jets. The Jets defense, and I will have to say this, I have bagged on Robert Saleh a lot. And I think most of it was rightfully so. The one key thing that I have seen over the last 2 weeks, since Robert Saleh was relieved of his duties, that Jet defense under Jeff Ulbrich is worse. It is not very good. And the fact that you let Russell Wilson, 35-year-old Russell Wilson, who was getting critically panned by everyone in the media outside of Mike Tomlin, who essentially now can put on, the glasses meme of, the cool, where he looks like the smartest man in the room. For Russell Wilson to play as well as he did, to throw for as many yards as he did, which is the most by a Steelers quarterback in their debut ever in franchise history, beating out the immortal Earl Morrall, former former Colt quarterback back in the 70s. That is incredibly surprising. It was impressive. It was the most points they had scored in about three or 4 years. They also had 2 wide receiver touchdowns in the game. Pittsburgh going into the game only had 1 for the year, and that was to Calvin Austin on that 55-yard touchdown pass. So, those 2 losses there, I didn't expect those games to turn out that way. And to be fair, I thought the Jets, after Breece Hall basically ran up the field, and to be fair, they shouldn't even have that touchdown because Jeff Ulbrich screwed up, and that ended up benefiting him when he mistimed a challenge flag throw, which caused them to allow Aaron Rodgers to throw his only touchdown to Tyler Conklin. But And the other, so those are 2 of my straight up losses. The other 2, Lions, Vikings, Packers, Texans, all the NFC North teams. Both those games came down to last-second field goals. I have no shame in those picks. Too many different plays, a 2-point conversion here or there could have made the difference. Lions, Vikings, if Sam Darnold makes one stop, it comes down to, just those 2. So those 2 losses I'm okay with. Anybody that picked either team, kudos to you won, but don't, unless you're a diehard Viking fan that just hates the Lions, no, don't bash people for making that pick, because we all seen that was a sensible game. So I said Lions-Vikings, that to me seems like the NFC Championship preview as of this moment. So, but that's how I got my 9-4. Against the spread, I went 7-6. The toughest loss I had there was the Rams-Raiders game that I bet at the Rams at 5.5. And Antonio Pierce, he made the right decision, and I will defend him on that because they actually did get a stop. And Gardner Minshew, after Aiden O'Connell broke his thumb after about 4 or 5 plays in the series, and now he's on the IR, and Gardner Minshew has his job back after about a week and a quarter of watching Aiden O'Connell play. Essentially, Pierce knew the bookies, and he called the play to cut that half point to give the people who took the Raiders the win against the spread. So that was probably the only one I was angry about. Everything else, pretty much, it was a small margin, and I thought, the Falcons are going to win by slight favorites, or I thought this, or and it just ended up not happening. Though I was so surprised. I can't believe that you actually could get the Chiefs as a road dog in a game, and people genuinely thought the Niners were going to win that game. But that's how I got my 7-6 record, But now, this is, a full week of games, so we got a 16-game slate. There are a couple changes, though. So the Eagles-Bengals game that was supposed to be at 4:25 got flexed backward, or flexed up, or got demoted to a 1 o'clock start now. And the Bears at Commanders game is now a 4:25 game. That is going to be a matchup between the number 1 and possibly the number 2 overall picks in the 2024 draft. That is due to possibly because of Jaden Daniels getting hurt in the game against the Panthers really early on. It didn't matter at the end of the day. Marcus Mariota played well. He actually, he played efficiently. The Panthers sucked. They could have won the game essentially by Dante Fowler getting a pick 6 that could have tied the game, and Seibert all he needed to do is to kick a field goal. But, I think that injury for Jaden Daniels is going to be key, because if he doesn't play, I think the Bears have a comfortable margin to win. And I think, honestly, if Jaden Daniels does play, where the line is now, that might shift very quickly. But those 2 changes for the schedule flex. But yeah, so those are my key things there. And I'll talk about the rest of the games throughout the rest of this video. So let's get started, everybody. So on Thursday, when the 5-1 Minnesota Vikings travel to Los Angeles to take on the 2-4 Los Angeles Rams, the Minnesota Vikings are 3-point favorites in this game. Give me Minnesota here, -3, and Minnesota is straight up. Then the next game in an AFC North clash, when the 5-2 or 4-3 Baltimore Ravens travel to Cleveland to take on the 1-6 Cleveland Browns. The Baltimore Ravens are 9.5-point favorites in this game. This is one of the easier straight up picks if you're doing picks. Shout out Bridgewater's Finest in this pick and pool. If you're doing picks with confidence points, this would be a 16 or 15 or 16 point game straight up. I'm going to take Baltimore straight up. But with how the AFC North is, and with how the Browns have played, and now knowing that Deshaun Watson, their quarterback, tore his Achilles and is now out for the rest of the year, and it could be Jameis Winston. If Jameis Winston plays this weekend, I do think that he has enough talent, around him and enough ability that with that defense in a division perspective, 9.5 was too much for me to lay. So I'm going to take Baltimore here straight up, but give me Cleveland here plus 9.5. The next game, when the 1-5 Tennessee Titans travel to Detroit to take on the 5-1 Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions are 11.5-point favorites in this game. There was a part of me that was tempted. Like last week, I took the Titans plus 8.5, and I honestly thought, well, we could maybe have a difference there. Maybe the Titans would do the first half. I actually thought that was a good pick. Well, then by the second half, after the Bills thoroughly took control, they ended up winning by 14. And I'm like, okay, I believe this Detroit Lion team is much better, or not much better, but it is at least a level to a level and a half better than this current Bills team right now. So if you give me 11.5 with that Lions roster the way it's running at home, give me the Detroit Lions here minus 11.5 and Detroit straight up. But then, all right, to the next game, probably the oddest pick of the week, and I will explain this very quickly. When the 2-5 or 3-4 Arizona Cardinals travel to Miami, they go only 2-5. Although I mean the 2-4 Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins are 3.5-point favorites in this game. I am going to take Arizona here plus 3.5 regardless, but I just want to mention this to everybody, just so they know. Apparently, just today, Mike McDaniel has said the Tua Tagovailoa has been cleared to practice, and he will attempt to practice throughout the week. If he gets cleared, he will start. If Tua cannot clear the concussion protocol, so regardless, I'm taking Arizona plus 3.5 if Tua starts or not. But if Tua Tagovailoa does not start with the injuries to Tim Boyle with the injuries to Tyler Huntley, Skylar Thompson, and all those, I will take the Arizona Cardinals to win the game also straight up if Tua does not play. If Tua does play, I'm going to take Miami here to win straight up. But if Tua does not play, I will take the Arizona Cardinals plus 3.5 and Arizona straight up. Regardless, I'm taking Arizona plus 3.5, but it's just a little precursor there. Depending on the health status of Tua Tagovailoa, I will take the Dolphins to win, and I believe Tua will be cleared. I will take the Dolphins to win right now. If he is not cleared, I'm taking Arizona here plus 3.5 and Arizona straight up if he is not. So that's my little disclaimer for that game. The next game, when the 2-5 New York Jets travel to New England to take on the 1-6 New England Patriots, the New York Jets are 7-point favorites in this game. I'm going to take the New York Jets here minus 7 and the New York Jets straight up. Then the next game, when the 4-3 Atlanta Falcons go to Tampa Bay to take on the 5-2 or 4-3 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa Bay Buccaneers are 2.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Tampa Bay here minus 2.5 and Tampa Bay straight up. Then the next game, when the 4-2 Philadelphia Eagles travel to Cincinnati to take on the 3-4 Cincinnati Bengals. The Cincinnati Bengals surprisingly are 2.5-point favorites in this game. And one of my, I believe, my only outright upset of the entire weekend. Give me Philadelphia here plus 2.5 and Philadelphia straight up. Then the next game, when the 5-2 Green Bay Packers travel to Jacksonville to take only 2-5 Jacksonville Jaguars. The Green Bay Packers are 4.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Green Bay here minus 4.5 and Green Bay straight up. Then the next game, when the 4-3 Indianapolis Colts go to Houston to take on the 5-2 Houston Texans. The Houston Texans are 6.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Indianapolis here plus 6.5, but I'm going to take the Houston Texans straight up. Then the next game, when the 2-5 New Orleans Saints travel to Los Angeles to take on the 4-2 or 3-3 Los Angeles Chargers. The Los Angeles Chargers are 7.5-point favorites in this game. Give me the Los Angeles Chargers here minus 7.5 and the Los Angeles Chargers straight up. Then the next game, when the 5-2 Buffalo Bills travel to Seattle to take on the 4-3 Seattle Seahawks. The Buffalo Bills are 3-point favorites in this game. Give me Buffalo here minus 3 and Buffalo straight up. Then the next game, when the 4-2 Chicago Bears go to Washington to take on the 5-2 Washington Commanders. The Chicago Bears are 1-point favorites in this game. Give me Chicago here minus 1 and Chicago straight up. Then the next game, when the 1-6 Carolina Panthers go to Denver to take on the 4-3 Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos are 7.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Denver here minus 7.5 and Denver straight up. Then the next game, when the 6-0 Kansas City Chiefs go to Las Vegas to take on the 2-5 Las Vegas Raiders. The Kansas City Chiefs are 10-point favorites in this game. Give me Kansas City here straight up, but I'm going to take Las Vegas plus 10. Then the next game, when the 3-3 Dallas Cowboys go to San Francisco to take on the 3-4 San Francisco 49ers. San Francisco 49ers are 5.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Dallas here plus 5.5, but I'm going to take San Francisco straight up. Then the next game, the Monday night game, when the 2-5 New York Giants go to Pittsburgh to take on the 5-2 Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers are 6.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Pittsburgh here minus 6.5 and Pittsburgh straight up. All right, it's time for my quick thoughts on each game. The Minnesota Vikings over the Los Angeles Rams. This is a game to, when I look at these two teams, I feel that Minnesota, even in their best effort, played a very good overall game. They were incredibly effective. Aaron Jones had a great 30-yard run to start. They were up 10-0. It seemed like they had found their kicker for the future in Will Riker, and he drilled some pretty big kicks throughout the game. They had a big defensive score, which I thought would give the Vikings the win. And I really like what this Vikings team has done. And I still think overall, if you look at the NFC, weirdly enough, the NFC North probably have the 3 best teams in the conference. For me right now, I would argue the Bears. You could say maybe you're 4, but I'd probably have Tampa. Probably Tampa at that. Tampa and Washington right now, from what I've seen. But Chicago would be 6. So to have 4 of the top 6 teams in the NFC be in the division would be pretty impressive. It was pretty impressive in my opinion. Again, people could have different opinions, but I really like what the Vikings have done. And I think the Vikings, again, this is a short week for them. They have a tough taste in their mouth. They knew that they squandered some big opportunities. Sam Darnold had a huge turnover from Brian Branch, who's a phenomenal safety, which was a key play. And it just also felt like they needed T.J. Hockenson. He could play, maybe not. But Johnny Munt really couldn't move anything. But it's also where you're playing a Ram team that, yes, they're going to get Cooper Kupp back, and that will be a significant boost to their offense. But the offensive line just looks shot to you-know-what. And Brian Flores, I feel like, will just consistently dial a good quality amount of pressure on the Rams' offensive line, which, has played a little bit better. But also it's where Matt Stafford hasn't had a lot of opportunity to make a lot of big plays with receivers he has. Getting his number 1 receiver, Cooper Kupp, back will be good. But I also think the problem is when Matt Stafford has Cooper Kupp, it's very Calvin Johnson-esque when he was the Lions, to where he is so Cooper Kupp dependent. The Tutu Atwells, the Colby Parkinsons, the Demarcus Robinsons, all the other receivers the Rams have. I just don't know if Stafford's going to be able, to be willing to spread the ball around, not giving it to his best offensive receiver every single play, which always seems like it's the problem with Stafford over the last few years with Kupp. It'll be great with talent. I just don't know if it'll be a winning strategy against this Vikings defense, which has been essentially stout and consistent the majority of the year outside of Detroit. And the Vikings the Rams do not have the offensive line or the talent that the Lions have, in most positions compared to the Rams at this moment. Could the game be interesting? Sure. It's Sam Darnold going back to LA. He went to USC, so he definitely knows the area. He's played, in that area a good amount. But I look at this game and go, the Rams, even though they're starting to get slowly back on the mend, and that defense has played pretty good and pretty solid in key stretches, I think the Vikings, with their roster and just better overall talent, should be able to go into LA in a non-hostile environment and beat the Rams in a pretty tough win to get the Vikings to 6-1 going into their next big game next week. So that's all. Like Minnesota here -3 and Minnesota straight up. The next game, the Baltimore Ravens over the Cleveland Browns. This is a game where, ladies and gentlemen, it's a fairly easy pick. When you look at the Ravens and the Browns are in a horrible situation. Horrible situation. It's a horrible situation to where Deshaun Watson has torn his Achilles. And look, I will say this. I typically don't, I didn't like the fans booing the injury. But I'm going to be a bit different and say I can understand why people were cheering. It's not, it's kind of a double reason. You could look at it and say that the professional frustration, because Deshaun Watson has played arguably the worst football of anybody this year. You could see it from, jump one. They traded away Amari Cooper. Nick Chubb just got back. The offensive line shot to you-know-what. The defense has been ravaged by injury. This team has just been ravaged by a vicious injury bug throughout the year, and he hadn't played well. But I also can understand from a personal perspective where people do not like that man. That people understand Deshaun's history of off-field transgressions. I'm not going to go into, all of them, or, But I'm going to give those fans a little bit of grace and say that I understand a bit why they could be happy on a personal level. Okay? I wouldn't have done it because to me that whole story where it is a part of his career, that was going on 3 years ago. Like that, we shouldn't harp on things 3 years ago to today. However, I can understand if you were a Browns fan that were personally happy and had a personal joy seeing Deshaun Watson, I can understand. I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna be like Myles Garrett and Jameis Winston who wanted to make Deshaun a sympathetic figure. I don't think he's earned the right from a professional or a personal standpoint to gain any of that. But I just wanted to make that just my own opinion about that. But with that injury though, this game is incredibly easy now because I feel like for the Ravens, they usually typically have routinely beat the Browns on a consistent basis. But if you're telling me Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who also has a finger injury himself, I actually hope DTR actually plays because if it's Jameis Winston playing against us, I actually feel like I'd be a bit concerned because Jameis Winston probably is the best overall talent at that position at this moment. I just know it's a bit like a younger black version of Joe Flacco in a way, to where I know Jameis is what Mariota's age, so he's about 30. So maybe you could see, if Jameis could play well with that team, but not having Amari, having Jerry Jeudy a bot, having no offensive line, and having a defense that just looks deflated. I just genuinely do not see how the Browns win this game. But if you're telling me if Jameis plays, could they hang around within 10 points? Absolutely. Our offensive line's been beat pretty consistently on some occasions, and I think that Browns defensive line has enough talent that they can do that. I just feel like for the Ravens, it'll be a nice, comfortable win. It'll be a tough, gritty game. It's a division opponent, but I just feel like for the Browns, they're in fire sale mode, and they just want to probably get to the end of the year, and it's probably better if they lose the game to win, just in the context of what their aspirations are. Though I would tell Andrew Berry and Jimmy Haslam, you're not in a retooling year. You need to rebuild and seriously think about moving forward with the franchise. So that's all I like. Baltimore here straight up, but Cleveland plus 9.5. The next game, the Detroit Lions over the Tennessee Titans. This is the game, again, when you look at this game, I feel like the Detroit Lions yesterday asserted themselves as clearly, to me, the best team in the NFC. They're not the best team in the NFL. That is the Kansas City Chiefs. And I know you could say, I think holistically this year, the roster, the talent, the health, that all goes to Detroit. Like, I think Detroit probably has the best roster currently. Quarterback, running back, receivers, tight end, offensive line, defense, kicking. Like, they have probably the best overall roster. They just don't have the experience and consistency that Mahomes, Spags, Reed have. And the Chiefs, even as playing as badly offensively as they've been, they're still undefeated themselves. So, and at the end of the day, the Lions did lose to a Tampa team. So Detroit here, Jared Goff actually over the last 4 weeks has more touchdowns than incomplete passes, which is crazy. I think in a 4-week span, he has thrown more touchdowns than he has incompletions over a month. Okay, and I would say Jared Goff is the MVP. Though, unfortunately, David Montgomery came back in the game. And you're playing a Titan team that, again, when I tried to give the Titans the 8.5 last week against Buffalo, I thought for the first half I felt pretty good. And I do think Mason Rudolph does give them the best chance to win. However, this is, if, the Bills, who, they might have a more mobile quarterback and they have a decent roster. If the Bills can kind of pull away in the second half against that number one defense, I feel like the Lions, who have a better, roster construction and maybe talent at this point than the Lions, should be able to do the same thing, if not better, even with that 11.5 point spread at home. Could the Titans, maybe be in it for a chance? Sure. Jared Goff, against Tampa did have a couple turnovers. And the Titans defense does cause a couple turnovers. Mason Rudolph, if he can manage the game well enough to keep it maybe within 11.5 points, I just don't expect it to happen. I think the Lions just easily roll over the Titans to get to their 6th win of the year and continue to show that they are clearly the class of the NFC by another good, solid, dominant win. So that's all. Detroit here minus 11.5 and Detroit straight up. The next game, the Miami Dolphins over the Arizona Cardinals. This game to me essentially comes down to Tua at quarterback. If when I watch the Miami Dolphins, it is just brutal. Like, because essentially I feel like if the Dolphins, outside of the Buffalo game, Miami could have beat Seattle with Tua. They beat New England with him, and they definitely could have beat Indianapolis after how bad I saw Tim Boyle play and how bad Anthony Richardson is a quarterback. But I will make that opinion about that more about my Colts video in the Colts game. But this game essentially comes down to Tua. Like, when Tua signed that deal and Tua got hurt, I genuinely felt like, wow, this was a huge moment of, this is why you don't pay a $53.1 million quarterback with an injury history that much money. And I honestly thought Tyler Huntley or the Dolphins would have got a veteran quarterback that could have done something. They decided to go with Tyler Huntley. And to be fair, Tyler Huntley, probably out of all the quarterbacks they had, was probably playing the best. Because Tim Boyle is now 0 for 10 in his last 10 starts. The only other quarterback that has played that many games and not one is Zach Mettenberger, the former LSU bust out of Tennessee. So, and again, I look at the Cardinals, and again, they have talent. Marvin Harrison got cleared out of concussion protocol. That's huge tonight. But essentially, to me, when I think the Dolphins have a better roster. The Dolphins are a better coach team than the Cardinals. And I believe if Tua is healthy and is cleared to play, they should beat the Cardinals. But overall, it's where if it's not, and it's Tyler Huntley or Skylar Thompson or Tim Boyle or whoever, I'll take the Cardinals to win that game just because I cannot trust that the quarterback can get the ball to their talents. Think of it this way, right? Alex Ingold had 25 yards receiving. That was more yards receiving than Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle had yesterday. And I don't care who your quarterback is. Heck, I could go out of my wheelchair and I probably could throw the ball even significantly underthrown. I could probably get more yards to the Miami Dolphins' two best weapons than Tyler Huntley, Skylar Thompson, or Tim Boyle can. And I did not think Tua Tagovailoa would be this valuable to the Dolphins franchise. And to Chris Greer and to Tua and his family and all that, I hope you can stay healthy. But I do want to offer you an apology. I was wrong. Okay, you are going to go down in history as the third best quarterback that franchise has ever had. But boy, did you earn your $52 million. Because I thought Mike McDaniel was this offensive genius. But boy, was I wrong. Because if you put other people back there, it doesn't look great at all. So, But again, I would take Arizona plus 3.5 regardless. Because Arizona, for the most part, if their roster is healthy, has pretty much been competitive in most games. I just think at the end of the day, you're asking the Cardinals to travel out to Miami. If Tua plays, Tua will outplay Kyler. I think the Dolphins get a decent win. Then maybe you would have some confidence saying, okay, they have their quarterback back. That offense will be back. Can they go on a run that maybe gets them into the playoff? Who knows? I guess it will still continue on to his health. So that's all like Miami is straight up for right now. But Arizona plus 3.5. But again, if Tua is inactive, I'm taking Arizona again straight up as well. So. All right, the next game, the New York Jets over the New England Patriots. This is a game to where we saw this game a few weeks ago, back in Week 3. This was the highlight of the Jets season. They blew them out 24-3. That's the first time we saw Drake May play. You could argue, actually, since then, that Drake May, in the two games that he has played, outside, the last two starts against Houston and the Jags in the AFC South, that Drake May has played better football over the last 2 weeks than Aaron Rodgers has. The Jets now have lost 4 straight games. They have a worse record than Zach Wilson did last year at 4-3. And essentially, I also saw somewhere else, Aaron Rodgers in 2022 and in 2024, if you take out the Achilles injury, through their first 7 games, is basically playing the exact same football, which is not horrible football, though, the 6 interceptions, that's a crazy pace for Aaron Rodgers because I think his career high in his rookie year was 13. So he's already thrown like 6 interceptions in the last 2 of the last 3 games. He's thrown 3, 5. He's thrown 6 interceptions over the last 3 games. He's thrown 8 interceptions the entire year. which is crazy just knowing how efficient he usually is in these spots. But at the end of the day, with the Patriots, like, they got absolutely steamrolled by the Jags through their running game. Breece Hall should have a field day against this Patriot defense. I don't have trust that, Devontae Lazard should be able to make big plays in the passing game. Brian Thomas had a very good, solid game against the Patriots secondary. He definitely had about 2 or 3 big plays there. I think Tyler Conklin could play well. I think the Jets have a good enough offense and a good enough team. And even with the injury to Xavier Newman, their right guard, I hope he's okay. That was a pretty scary moment. But I just look at this Jets and Patriots team. You're going to tell them they go into New England. They've won 2 straight now since after losing 17 or 18 straight again with Bill Belichick at the helm. I think the Jets, take a little bit of solace. Rodgers will stop listening to the media. They'll stop listening to all the noise. And I think the Jets win this game comfortably. Because even with all the Jets' dysfunction, they just are, I believe, a significantly better team than what I've seen out of the Patriots. And until a rookie quarterback wins a game, I cannot pick a rookie quarterback to win if I haven't seen him win a game at least first. So that's why I like the New York Jets here -7, the New York Jets straight up. And yes, I know Jaden Daniels against the Giants was an exception. And maybe there is an exception with them playing the Titans in a few weeks, depending on how that game shapes up, where I might take the Patriots to win, even with a rookie quarterback, even if he hasn't won. So, but that's why I like the New York Jets here -7, and New York Jets straight up. The next game, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers over the Atlanta Falcons. This game, to me, comes down to essentially the home-and-home split. Atlanta and Tampa played a fantastic game a few weeks ago. Kirk Cousins threw for a franchise record in yards, 15 most overall yards, and the Falcons just seem to have, in key moments, they have, I believe, won every game on the road this year so far, and they have lost almost every single home game outside of Tampa. They are 1-3 at home. I think they are then in that way 1, 2. They're at least 2-0 at they're at least 2-0 on the road. And I could probably be forgetting. They're 2-0 on the road. So I feel like with Tampa though, like, this is a big moment for them. They know if they play us and they win, they might have a little more comfort. But I also know this essentially, I believe, will determine who leaves the NFC South with the division. If I believe both teams are going to be tied with their records. And again, could Atlanta win this game? Sure. I think Atlanta has a good enough roster. They have all the offensive weapons. They have the talent. But if you're telling me Kirk Cousins coming off a very tough game against the game Seattle defense goes into Baker's Bucs ship and comes out with a W, I think you would be wrong in that regard. Should be a great game. I wouldn't be surprised if Atlanta won, but I'm essentially just going to take the home-and-home split here as my main reason. And I just believe the Bucs have just been playing a little bit more consistently and more confidence compared to the Falcons over the last couple weeks. So that's why I like Tampa Bay here, -2.5. Tampa Bay straight up. The next game, the Philadelphia Eagles over the Cincinnati Bengals. This is a game to where I'm taking the Philadelphia Eagles here based on the fact that I just cannot trust the Cincinnati Bengals team. They were playing a backup quarterback through essentially the second half, and it just looked like that it was a grinding game for them to win. Joe Burrow played okay. He had a couple of nice touchdowns. He made a couple of nice scrambles. They did have the one big drive at the end that made a 7-point game, which you shouldn't have been in, against the Browns team on their Dorian Thompson-Robinson as their quarterback. And I love what the Eagles have done. Saquon Barkley had 183 total scrimmage yards. The Giants themselves, I believe, had 118 total yards for the entire game yesterday, which is really pathetic and sad. But I love the Eagles secondary, how they've been playing. They have really good corners, solid safeties. And I think for the Eagles, that was probably the most complete game I've seen the Eagles play from beginning to end with really no issues, no clock management issues. I think Jalen, the one thing you can say is he is too reliant on a goal ball to A.J. Brown. But for Nick Sirianni to call up that play, it's an easy enough call, and that shows the guts and the gumption. When you get it right, that makes you so, it pretty much put the game away at that point. Also, shout out to the Eagles defense, 8 significant sacks, and over the last 2 weeks, the Eagles defense has not allowed an offensive touchdown. So that's also a very impressive and quality stat, in my opinion, for the Eagles. I also just think when you look at the Bengals, they're not as healthy, and I just trust Philadelphia with their roster and their confidence that they can grind out a win with Jalen and pretty much play the same formula against the banged-up Bengals offensive line, who lost Orlando Brown today due to a calf injury. And I think the Eagles get the dub and head back home, at least 5-2, and feeling pretty good about where they are. So that's why I like Philadelphia here, plus 2.5. Philadelphia straight up. The next game, the Green Bay Packers over the Jacksonville Jaguars. This is a game to where I am taking the Green Bay Packers here, minus 4.5, based on the fact that the Packers, I think, are just significantly better than the Jags. They are just... The Jags, look, they ran the ball 18, 19 straight times. Tank Bigsby played very well. I was thoroughly impressed of how Jacksonville was committed to the run game. But at the end of the day, they played the Patriots. This is a Packers team that their defense has played very well. That was C.J. Stroud's worst game of his professional career. And Jeff Ulbrich, the former Boston College defensive coordinator, deserves a tremendous amount of credit. Also, I want to shout out that Josh Jacobs had his first receiving touchdown of his career. They actually said that during the game. That is the most receptions for a player before they got their first receiving touchdown in NFL history. So shout out to Josh Jacobs for catching his first receiving touchdown as a NFL player, or as a running back. And I also just think with Green Bay's a great fan base that travels. They, going into Jacksonville where it's hard to get fans to go anyway. I think they, fill up the stadium mostly, yellow and green instead of green and teal from the Jags' perspective. I think the Packers' defense should be able to beat up a pretty banged-up defensive line. And also, I just trust Jordan Love with the weapons he has and the talent that he has going against the Jags' defense that routinely has been spanked by the Bills, the Bears, the Texans did a good number, even the Colts did a good number, putting up 34 points. This Jags defense has been god-awful for the majority of the year. I think with an offense led by Jordan Love with the weapons he has and the talent he has, they should be able to go into Jacksonville and get a nice, comfortable, and solid win over a Jags team that has a little bit of confidence with 2 of their last 3 wins, but that's probably going to be the last bit of confidence they have for the rest of the year, looking at their schedule outside of the Tennessee game. So that's all at Green Bay here, minus 4.5, and Green Bay straight up. The next game, the Houston Texans over the Indianapolis Colts. This is a game to where the Houston Texans, even with C.J. Stroud playing as bad as he was, they still could have won it because of their defense, which is amazing because they have a top 5 overall defense, but they have one of the worst red zone defenses in the entire league, which is kind of stunning. That it's very much the opposite to where they break or they break at the worst part. You would argue you'd rather break in the beginning and then bend at the red zone. They bend 20-20 and they break in the red zone, which is god awful. So to me, when I look at how this is going, to go, I think the Texans, they grinded out a win against the Colts in week 1. It was a 29-27 game, and I remember that game because I was so mad because I took the Texans minus 2.5, and Colts covered by half a point. I hate that half point, but I digress. But I think the Colts, their defense has played very well, and I don't know if Richardson, playing in that spot, I think he can hold on and win and get a win. And again, the last time actually they played each other in week 2 last year, Anthony Richardson ended up winning that game 31-34 to 10-4. He got hurt. So I do think the Colts can kind of hang around this game just based off of the division rival and the history of it. But if you're telling me at home with the Texans coming off the stinging tough loss that they had, I think they take it out on a Colt team that Shane Steichen has mustered up a 4-3 record through 7 games, which I think is impressive. But also at the same time, and let me just say very quickly, the only other reason why I'm taking the Texans, if Anthony Richardson, he is essentially he is the more athletic, more physically strength version of Timothy Tebow. That's what watching Anthony... And I would say this, Tim Tebow seems to be a better passer than Anthony Richardson is. It has to get to a point to where, you pretty much play Anthony Richardson till the end of the year. But if this guy can't show any positive development as a passer, he is essentially a morphed form of Tim Tebow in terms of running and strength, but even worse as a passer than Tim Tebow. And, like, if I was a Colts fan, I can't keep watching this. I want to see Joe Flacco. I want to see Joe Flacco, you know, in the games, because I think the Colts could genuinely be an AFC, you know, decent team. Like, Joe Flacco, in the 2.5 games that he played much better. He played much better than Anthony Richardson has. The fact that Shane Steichen has 2 wins, the fact that he has 2 wins of Anthony Richardson is just downright, like, it's impressive, but it's sad. Because it's like, this is a guy that, like, he's not getting it, or he's not developing in a way to where, like, you're seeing, it's not like Caleb Williams, or Jane Daniels, or Drake May. Seriously. Tell me, and I'll give you a game second. This is the last part of this whole diatribe here. I think Drake May is already a better pure quarterback in 2 games than what I've seen out of Anthony Richardson. Like, easily. Like, Drake May will have a better NFL career than Anthony Richardson. Because I've seen Drake May at least complete a respectable amount of passes. A respectable percentage of passes. Like, Anthony Richardson is just this weird home run mesh of talent that just Shane Steichen can't mold this together. And that's a problem, because he's worked with Justin Herbert. He's worked with Jalen Hurts. He's worked with Joe Flacco. He worked with Gardner Minshew. Look how bad Gardner Minshew's playing right now. Like, he's worked with everybody he's played with. And watching the Colts offense with Anthony at quarterback, it's just, it's mind-bending frustrating. Because I'm like, my goodness, why can't you show growth? Why can't you show growth? Even though, like, you've seen out of Bo Nix. I've seen more growth out of Bo Nix. Even though he took a step back on Thursday, I digress. But I've seen growth out of Bo Nix at quarterback than I've seen out of Anthony Richardson. And it just, that's why I can't take him to win. Like, the Colts team, like, has every chance to, you know, be competitive in all these games. But as long as you have Anthony Richardson at quarterback, like, it's just, it's not going to be worth it. So, but that's why I like Houston here straight up, Indianapolis plus 6.5. The next game, the Los Angeles Chargers over the New Orleans Saints. The New Orleans Saints are in infirmary ward right now down in the Seoul, Louisiana, and the Chargers, regardless if they, you know, win against the Cardinals or not, I think at home, the Saints having to go there. Derek Carr probably doesn't play again with Spencer Rattler, who has played okay, but he definitely took a step back because he had 2 big fumbles that ended up being, touchdowns for the Broncos, or at least 10 points there. I think with this Chargers defense, with Bosa, with Mack, with that secondary, and Spencer Rattler's third start, I just have very little confidence that the Chargers at home, even with New Orleans fans going over there, have any trouble with a Saint team that is floundering and flailing at this point. So that's why the Los Angeles Chargers here, minus 7.5, and Los Angeles Chargers straight up. The next game, the Buffalo Bills over the Seattle Seahawks. This is a game to where I'm going to trust the Buffalo Bills defense, James Cook's running ability, and Josh Allen's ability and just playmaking and lack of bad decision making to beat a Seattle team that, you know, in a big spot. Like, this is a big moment for Seattle, but where again, they had the division lead. They had the confidence in them to win this one. But when I just looked at the rosters, and I'm like, okay, both defensive coaches. Sean's done a pretty good one. Joe Brady's done a good job. Ryan Grubb has done a pretty good job in Seattle offense. When it comes down to these types of games, the Seattle defense has not been good in the last little bit of stretch. The Bills defense has been fairly consistent majority of the year. I think the Bills, Josh Allen can make more dynamic plays, and the reason why I'm going with the Bills, even in a huge, you know, east to west coast trip for the Bills, they just have better playmakers. Amari Cooper is going to be a huge difference for them. Cancels out one of the receivers, and I just trust the Bills roster and decision making to make more consistent and timely plays than I trust Geno against this Bills defense. Even though I do want to say Sean McDermott has done a fantastic job with that Bills defense. Because the fact that they have all that talent gone and they are still playing effective football, you know, effective and consistent defense is incredibly impressive to me. So, it should be an interesting game where, like, if Seattle won that game, I wouldn't be that surprised. Like, Seattle, for the most part, for a majority of the year, has played better football and consistent football than not. I think, the Niner game was pretty tough. That was bad. And then I remember the Giant loss was a tough one, and then I forget the other loss they had. Geno lost to... Wasn't the Cardinals. Geno lost to... Oh, the Lions. The Lions game. In the Lions game, they played fairly well. Like the Seahawks this year haven't been a, overall bad football team. They just ran into a Lions offense that was a juggernaut. Geno had 2 big turnovers in the second game, and essentially it was a bad 4th down decision that cost them the game against the Giants. So, like, the Seahawks can go at home and beat this Buffalo Bills team, which doesn't have, all the talent they had before. But if you're just looking at the sense, run game, Josh Allen traveling, Josh Allen will make more plays and be a better playmaker than Geno, which will be the difference in the game. So that's why I like Buffalo here, -3, and Buffalo straight up. The next game, Chicago Bears over the Washington Commanders. I'm taking Chicago here, -1, based on the fact that in this game where you have both good offenses, good young quarterbacks, even if Jaden Daniels does play, I'll take the Bears based on this sole reason. The Chicago Bears defense is a significantly better unit than the Washington Commanders defense. I know the Commanders have played fairly well over the last couple of weeks. We do have to look at the competition of they played a 1-win Brown team and a 1-win Panther team. And their defense looked dominant every other game where they had to play a reasonable opponent outside of Arizona, which I will give them. They pretty much have been in shootouts or they've given up a significantly amount of points. And I think with the Bears, how they've been playing football recently with the roster they have, the Bears can definitely score a good amount of points, again, a good amount of yards on this Commander defense. I think for the Commanders, it'll be a bit of a tougher slate the other way. Mariota or Daniels regardless. I think if Jaden Daniels can make a few more plays or the Commanders can get Caleb Williams to make a couple, big turnovers or get a turnover or two on the Bears, I think the Commanders have a chance to win. But I feel very confident in that. I look at the Chicago Bears in this game, even with them on the road, that their defense should be able to play significantly better than the Commanders. That's a great Montez Sweat opportunity, a redemption game for him playing his former team. No Jonathan Allen. And I just really like where this Bears team is going, especially if Jaden Daniels cannot play. Caleb Williams can play. I'll play Mariota to give the Bears their 5th win of the season as well. So that's why I like Chicago -1, Chicago straight up. The next game, the Denver Broncos over the Carolina Panthers. Rematch Super Bowl 50. I'm taking Denver here based on the fact that Denver and Carolina is not a good football team. And now for the last couple of weeks, after what happened yesterday, Dave Canales obviously is getting questions about Bryce Young, about giving Bryce Young another opportunity. He is still committed to Andy Dalton, and that was easy enough for me to say for Carolina having to go to Denver, where Bo Nix has played, respectable out of the 4 rookies that have played. I probably would put him 4th because I've seen more improvement out of Drake May. But Bo Nix, can easily make scrambles. That defense has been downright, stifling against a variety of different offenses. They're playing a older quarterback, and hopefully Surtain gets back, who doesn't have a lot of offensive weapons or a solid offensive line. I think the Broncos grind out another solid but, wavy win against the Carolina Panthers. They beat up another tomato can. And then a big moment for them will be when they travel to Baltimore. They go us on in 2 weeks. And I think the Ravens will expose the Broncos as more of the pretenders that they are, even though they would be 5-4 at that point. So that's like Denver here -7.5 and Denver straight up. The next game, the Kansas City Chiefs over the Las Vegas Raiders. The Chiefs just find ways to win. They, it doesn't matter who's there. Doesn't matter who's healthy. It just does not matter. The Chiefs will just find ways to win games. And they're playing a Raider team that, they've been competitive in a way, but at the end of the day, they're still the Raiders. And it just seems like every time the Raiders have opportunities, something gets hurt, somebody gets hurt, somebody misses a play, Gardner throws a pick. And at just the end of the day, if you're going to tell me Kansas City having to go to Vegas, where there's not that much of a home field advantage, playing a Raider team that's not going to have their playing their backup quarterback again with the limited roster they have with that Chiefs defense, they win another grinding game. But I'll take the Raiders +10 due to the division history. And I just don't think with the Chiefs not having Juju, Rashee Rice, or any of those players, I don't know if they can cover 10 points. They'll win, but I don't know if they'll cover 10. So that's all I can say to you straight up. But Las Vegas plus 10. The final two games, the San Francisco 49ers over the Dallas Cowboys. I'm taking the Cowboys here against the spread due to the San Francisco 49ers injuries. I'm taking the 49ers to win straight up just due to the recent history of this series of games. Dak Prescott has not beaten the San Francisco 49ers, I believe, in his career. Brock Purdy has never lost to Dak Prescott in these games. And in these games, when you look at the two coaches, with how both teams have played, I will trust that Kyle Shanahan and the Niners staff can out-scheme Mike McCarthy and his staff. It usually always happens, and most of the time, over the last little bit, it's been more of a blowout. More blowouts and more convincing. I think with the injuries for the Niners, I'll be a little bold here. I think the score pretty much is the identical one of what happened in the divisional round a couple years ago. I believe it is 19-14 in the game. So to me, in that regard, 19-14 would be the score I would have, because I really believe that the 49ers will grind out another win just based off the fact of Kyle Shanahan's recent history with the Niners in this game. That's the only reason. Like, if the Cowboys had a better coach, if the Cowboys have been playing any better over the last several weeks, I'd probably take the Cowboys to win this one. But just knowing the history, even with all the injuries, regardless of the teams, you take Kyle and Brock in this game over Mike and Dak pretty much every time. But I will give Dallas the 5 points because I just think the Niners are too banged up that they will not be able to cover, I believe, a 6-point spread. Because I do think the Cowboys will have some talent coming back, or well enough they can win. So that's why I like San Francisco here straight up, but Dallas plus 5.5. The last game, Pittsburgh over the Giants. The Pittsburgh Steelers and Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson is one of the better primetime quarterbacks in the history of the league. Daniel Jones has one win on primetime football throughout his career. That is the worst in the league. The Giants have no offensive line. The Eagles sacked him 8 times. If the Eagles pass rush can do that, the Steelers pass rush is better. And I just have confidence that Russell Wilson, even if Russell Wilson doesn't play nearly as well as he did last week, I do believe that the Steelers, with their running game, with Russ going up against that banged-up that weak Giants secondary, if the Steelers' offensive line can hold up enough, or Russ can make a few, deep shots with that Giants defensive line, which does lead the NFL in sacks, I think the Giants could hang around. But at the end of the day, if you're telling me who's going to make a bigger play in a primetime moment, Daniel Jones or Russell Wilson, I will go with Russell Carrington Wilson, every day of the week and twice on Sunday. And also for the Giants, they just can't score points. Daniel Jones has not thrown a touchdown in MetLife Stadium since he has gotten that contract extension over a year and a half ago. That's a crazy statistic, but it is true. There have been more quarterbacks outside of Daniel Jones that have thrown TDs in MetLife Stadium other than Daniel Jones, and that's been almost now for over, going on 19, 20 months. He still hasn't thrown a touchdown on that new contract at home in front of his home crowd, which is just downright stunning to me in a lot of ways. So, but that's why I like Pittsburgh here, minus 6.5, and Pittsburgh straight up. So those are my picks for this week. I hope everybody enjoyed the longer form video. I believe I'll be off next Monday as well, so I will attempt to do another longer form video. I know all my viewers typically like these longer form videos, so another one will be coming out next Monday as well. But that is it. So good luck to all players, coaches, fellow prognosticators, fantasy players, and until next week for my Week 9 predictions, this is Matt the Fanatic signing off. Until then, everyone, so long.